Hello friends, my name's Emile and welcome back to some more Forza Top Gear laps. Today we are doing the final part of the Best Of series. This time we're looking at the best of the late 2000s. As usual for these videos, I've picked these cars through countdowns, various countdowns I've found on the internet of the best cars of the late 2000s, and I've compiled a list of 7 to go around the track today. The first car today is the Audi RS4. This has 420 horsepower, 3,638 pounds of weight. We have had four-wheel drive Audis go around the Top Gear track various times. They're usually quite understeery, but overall decent handling, and as you can see through the first corner there, this one was much of the same. This does feel like a very heavy car. 3,638 pounds. Isn't that bad for a four-door sedan? Actually, I believe this may be lighter than the Audi R8 V10 Plus, which we've had round before. But this car, it was pretty decent overall. As I said, there is understeer here. The brakes aren't quite as spectacular as you'd probably imagine them to be. They're still fairly decent, they get it stopped. But then again, for me, no brakes are ever good enough. I'd rather just the car stop instantly, but of course that can't happen. Through the follow-through, there was a bit of a break. You sort of have to do that with these four-wheel drive cars. They can understeer through the follow-through. That's where cars with large understeer do struggle. It's through the follow-through and through the hammerhead. Also, this second-to-last corner, they can struggle at. The Audi RS4 was pretty decent round there, though. Overall, decent enough car. Nice amount of rear-end grip. A little bit understeery, a little bit heavy, but what do you expect? Next up we have a Shelby GT500. This is the 2007 model. 500 horsepower, 3,896 pounds. This is the heaviest car here today. Also, it does please me very much the fact that this is a GT500 with exactly 500 brake horsepower. Now, of course, you look at this car, it's a Mustang, it's a muscle car. You get a rough idea of what this car's going to drive like. And to be honest with you, it drives as you would imagine. There is some understeer in this vehicle, there is quite a decent amount of oversteer. However, it is fairly controllable. Definitely not the worst muscle car I've driven, definitely not the worst rear wheel drive car actually. There's much worse handling supercars than this. It's I was fully surprised by the GT500. Of course, straight line speed is pretty decent. This is a supercharged V8 Mustang, for crying out loud. It does sound fantastic. That is the one thing I will say about this episode. This is probably the nicest sounding episode of Forza Top Gear laps we've had in a long time, because all of these cars here today basically sound fantastic. But the GT500 overall, pretty decent car, very impressive. I would say the 2013 model is probably harder to drive than this, but then again that car does have 163 more horsepower. Yeah, GT500, pretty decent car overall. Next up we have the Alfa Romeo 8C Competition Nazi, 450 horsepower, 3,495 pounds. I'm pretty certain I pronounced that wrong. Ignore I said that. Anyways, this car is a very interesting handling car. You look at the handling setup on this car, and it's very, very wonky from stock. The rear suspension is much lower than the front suspension, and I believe the rear suspension is also quite a bit softer than the front suspension. That means this car is interesting to drive. It does have some oversteer issues, it has to be said, and it's very sort of snap oversteer. It will just come on randomly. Other than that, though, pretty decent. It sounds fantastic. It looks fantastic. Straight line speed, pretty damn decent. 450 horsepower. Is one of the lower powered cars here today, but that's still a decent amount of power. This car is A-class, I believe. Oh, wait, no, it's top of B-class. Sorry. 596 PI, I believe, for this car. So it's pretty decent in PI standings. And yeah, other than some snap oversteer, this car's pretty decent to drive. It does take a while to get used to it. However, once you are used to it, it's a relatively nice car to drive. A lot of smoke coming in to the second to last corner there, and around the last corner again, like pretty much every car here today, it's going to understeer wide off at the last corner. Anyways, next up we have an Aston Martin DBS, 510 horsepower, 3,737 pounds of weight. This is the second heaviest car here today. However, it is the third most powerful, so I guess there's leaps and bounds there. Anyway, the DBS, I drove this straight after the Alpha 8C because I wanted to see how the two cars would handle differently. They're both kind of similar GT cars. I do have to say the DBS was not as nice to drive as the 8C. This car, it does feel a lot heavier than the 8C. Admittedly, it is a lot heavier. It's about 250 pounds, roughly, heavier than the 8C, and you really can feel that weight. It does have 60 more horsepower, however they're mainly used to just spin up the rear wheels, unfortunately, which means this car is a bit of a letdown, unfortunately. Of course, it is a big Aston Martin. It's not really made to barrel around tracks at ridiculous speeds, but yeah, DBS was perhaps a little bit disappointing. That being said, we have had this go round in Season 2, I believe, and it didn't set a particularly good lap time, so hopefully it can regain some of its honour. Next up, we have the Ford Focus RS. This is the Mark II model. We've had the Mark 1 already go around. 300 horsepower, 3,236 pounds. This thing's bright green, is a hot hatch. There was no way I wasn't going to throw the Ford Focus RS into the mix. The Focus RS is a very, very interesting hot hatch. This, in my opinion, is probably the most mental hot hatch ever, save for maybe the 2015 Civic Type R. This is a pretty damn insane car. 300 horsepower through the front wheels is extraordinary. And to be honest with you, the Focus RS does handle it quite well. Of course, you know, is not absolutely perfect. You will get understeer in this car. But it ain't bad. Through the hammerhead, I was having some issues. I was basically just having to whack full lock on and just pray to God the car will actually go around, because sometimes it just understeer wide into the cones. But when it wasn't doing that, the Focus RS was pretty decent. Straight line speed, well, it is better than any other hot hatch, really. This, I believe, the closest car to this in this game is probably the Golf R. That's probably its closest rival. I assume this has more straight line speed than the Golf R. However, the Golf R, of course, has four-wheel drive. So it is slightly nicer through the corners. Brakes were pretty decent. And overall, yeah, the Focus RS was a pretty nice to drive car. Definitely a lot nicer than you'd expect with that big outlandish body kit. Next up, getting into some supercars here, we have the Ferrari 458 Italia. 562 horsepower, 3,274 pounds of weight. This was, well, when it first came out, loads of motoring journalists went cross-eyed because this car was pretty amazing. I've got to be honest, never really been a huge fan of the 458 Italia myself, and driving it around this track really did compound my opinion of it. This car handles a lot like the 650S did around this track. If you haven't seen my review of the Lamborghini Huracan versus the McLaren 650S, I said in that video this 650S felt like it had like virtually no grip whatsoever, or no traction or anything. You was just sort of, it was like driving on ice, and the 458 was very, very similar. You step on the power at the wrong time in this vehicle and it would just go sideways. It even went sideways through Hammerhead, which is quite scary. I think that's one of the only cars to have ever done that, actually, in Season 3. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the 458. I didn't particularly like driving this car around this track. However, it was quick. Of course, you know, straight line speed's very quick in the 458 Italia, and it wasn't, you know, I have driven worse, should we say, but not by much. And finally today we have a Pagani Zonda Cinque, 678 horsepower, 2,858 pounds. This is the lightest car here today. This is also the most powerful car here today. This could be looking at topping the 2017 Ford GT on our board. Now, what is surprising about the Zonda is, despite having almost 700 horsepower and weighing under 3,000 pounds, this is actually a very, very nice car to drive. The rear end on this Zonda is absolutely planted. There is understeer in the Zonda, which is quite surprising. But other than that, this is such a fantastic car to drive. The brakes are excellent, the rear end traction's excellent, apart from there, apparently. I got it sideways, but, you know, that was a very rare occurrence. The Zonda was a very, very nice handling car. Through Hammerhead, this was taking... Oh, sorry, through the follow-through, this was taking lots and lots of speed, as you can see down there. It was ludicrously fast. The Zonda was, yeah, the Zonda was amazing around here. This is the only R-Class car we've had around here currently as well, so that's another reason why I think it could go to the top of our board. And, well, it did it. The Zonda Cinque 111.363 goes into first place, beating the Ford GT by almost 2 seconds. That's insane. That Ford GT was quick. That Zonda's going to take a lot of beating. It really is. Moving on, the Ferrari 458 goes into 17th with a 116.594. Bit off a Dodge Viper GTS. Faster than a Ferrari F50, which is kind of surprising. 458 just didn't have the grip. It's also interesting to note the McLaren MP412C is almost a second quicker. Going down the board, Alpha 8C goes into 35 with a 119.689, being beaten by a Fast and Furious 350Z, but slightly quicker than an Infiniti El Rouge. Aston Martin DBS 120.247, slightly faster than a Dodge Viper. Fairly alright times for those two cars, considering the oversteer and so on that was present in both cars. Audi RS4 goes into 45th with a 122.000, exactly, beating a BMW M4, which is very impressive. Shelby GT500 122.542, that is bloody impressive. That beats an RCF by 0.2 of a second. Yeah, that Shelby GT500 was really quick, apparently. Also beat an NSX. And finally, moving down the board, the RS Focus 126.572. Not quite beating a Golf R, but it is faster than a... Oh, it's not faster than a Mitsubishi GTO, actually. I'll fix that by the time you see this. Slightly faster than a Focus ST, so overall, pretty decent time for the Focus RS. Anyways, friends, that is going to be it for this episode. As far as what we're going to do next time, I'm not too sure. I'm currently waiting for the DLC pack to drop as we speak, so it's either going to be a video on the DLC cars, or I'm going to be doing best of my personal favourite cars, and so on. They might be going around the track next week. Anyways, I want to thank you all very much for watching. My name's been The Real Emile. Until next time, farewell.